Okay, earlier this week, the High Court ruled that the government's plan to relocate asylum seekers to Rwanda is lawful after legal challenges from charities and campaign groups. It was never ending. In fact, it didn't just rule that it was lawful, it, rather hilariously, ruled that some of those charities don't have legal standing, which is fascinating. And this week, we decided to go and poll you, the nation, GBNews' people, in our People's Poll, and it revealed that 40%, 40, of the public support the government to make arrangements for relocating asylum seekers to Rwanda rather than Britain. 29% said they opposed the plans. Now, I just want to emphasise, while those numbers are on the screen there, actually, how important that is. I think a lot of people assume that when we do our People's Poll, it's just targeted at GB News viewers, and it's not. It's a proper poll, OK? So it's 40% of the British public as we polled them, which is why a lot of the time some of you decide, oh, gosh, you've said this amount of people supporting Brexit or this amount of people supporting that. So 40% of the public. Now, that is significant, actually, realistically, because actually, I think what that says is that there is actually a lot of support out there for the Rwanda plan and for this Rwanda deal. It's got to be part of a multi-pronged approach, and shortly I'm going to be talking to a guest on this, because what we started to see after years and years and years of the Tories, frankly, doing absolutely naff all about the issue, and the issue getting a lot worse, is all of a sudden the culmination of what appears to be some kind of multi-pronged approach. We've had the Rwanda plan being deemed lawful. Now, don't be fooled, this is somewhat of a smokescreen, because it could still end up being blocked. It could still pit us on a direct course of action when it comes to our European friends and judges over there. But only around 200 people initially will be able to go to Rwanda, which is not a massive deterrent. Certainly when you look at the fact that it's not a deterrent for a lot of people to actually die, sadly, in the Channel. Then we've had talk early this week of a cruise ship offshore processing being looked at, which I think is fascinating, and then talk as well of them ramping up the speed with which people can be processed. And it's only through a multi-pronged approach that this issue will ever get sorted. Joining me now to talk about it is the Director of the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity. It's Stephen Woolfe. Stephen, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Do you actually believe that anything is going to happen with a multi-pronged approach, or do you think, yet again, we're just being led down the garden path?
Actually, on this occasion, I think now that they're beginning to ramp up a little bit, I speak with people in the Home Office, obviously, when I'm trying to get data and understanding what their lines are. And I think there is a sense of enthusiasm and more positivity from those within the camps that have been trying to work for Rwanda. You've got to understand, and I think you know this very well, that even within the civil service, there are those who want to make it work and those who are trying to prevent it from working. And those who are trying to make it work feel positive about this court decision, the fact that they can ramp up sending people back to Albania, and the hope that other ideas can now come forward.
But, Stephen, I look around and I am incredibly concerned. It's another story that we covered earlier, and I'm going to draw a point of relevance here, which is that there is not, in any way, shape or form, mass public support for what happened in Scotland yesterday with the Gender Recognition Bill. There is not mass public support for the idea that women's spaces can be made in any way, shape or form less safe. And yet, a government up north who has been gripped by woke ideology decided that they had to push it forward as a matter of urgency. What we have seen now is increasing public support for the Rwanda scheme and, reading between the lines there, a more hardline approach to the Channel migrant crisis. I'm worried that our government down here is gripped by an equally woke political agenda, and they just won't make it happen. And the civil service, as you alluded to.
Oh, there is no doubt. You're in London, I've been in London. We can clearly see it, from law to politics to education to what's now being referred to as the blob, the civil service, that are immovable in moving on the ideas of government ministers and keeping up their own ideas. So without a doubt, we're going to be up against those challenges. Anyone who supported Brexit knows how well they have worked for the past 6 years to prevent Brexit from happening in the way that we anticipated. We know that the immigration industry has worked tremendously hard to stop Rwanda, and they're not going to give up. No. So the government has to be really strong on this. But can they? I hope so. But they've only got 2 years left.
They have only got 2 years left. Stephen, I am concerned as well that we're just being lied to on the basis of, OK, what we'll use is we'll use disused university halls, or we'll use disused military barracks. I mean, it actually, I must say, made me chuckle. Yesterday, I saw footage of a group of very well-heeled people in Muswell Hill standing outside a hotel where a bunch of so-called asylum seekers were being taken from that hotel to a military base. I mean, they could have housed all of them in any one of the spare rooms, by the way, probably all in one of the size houses in Muswell Hill, but they were protesting about saying refugees welcome here and all of that stuff. But actually, I'm concerned that if we're using military barracks, we're using student halls and we're using holiday camps as well, we're still going to end up using hotels. The taxpayer just pays twice.
Oh, yeah. I mean, refugees are welcome here as long as it's not in their homes.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that and hear that in Winchester when I have discussions and arguments, and I ask them, how many people have you housed? Oh, well, I can't possibly do that. So that's very clear. The hypocrisy of those who support these ideas never follows through themselves. My big concern about the whole putting people in holiday camps, into the military bases, is the idea that we're going to swiftly move the applications through. What I have noticed in the research, I switched it off on the screen behind me, is that there's been a massive increase in those people granted asylum this year than last year. And they're doing it at the initial decision stage. So my feeling is that within the government, their view is that they can solve this in their way by actually just granting asylum to as many people as possible and reducing the numbers. That's where I feel the concern is.
Well, that's where the concern is. But I think, as our People's poll showed there, that number of support, 40% for the government's Rwanda plan, right? And that is growing and that will grow. I suspect, Stephen, that the will of the people will actually increase on this and will put more pressure on the government as people see that if the government caves in and gives pay rises to a variety of different public sector workers, for example, and the people keep seeing money going off to Ukraine, people keep seeing money being spent everywhere else, at some point they're going to want to say, well, hang on a minute, can we keep a little bit of that here for us and get this Rwanda plan off the ground and sorted? Stephen, thank you very much. Stephen Woolfe there, who is Director of the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity. And actually, he made a point there as well, didn't he, about the fact that there's a lot of people who say refugees welcome, but just not in my house. Isn't it fascinating how many people were so quick off the mark to house a Ukrainian refugee, but if you offered them someone who'd just come across the channel or someone from Syria or Afghanistan, they would say no? I would argue that's because they're actually quite secretly racist. But anyway...